Hi guys, I'm back. Welcome to Dee-zyne. I am Dee and I'm actually on my way to work. And I thought I would just stop by for a few minutes and offer a few words of encouragement to women who have gone through and are continuing to go through a divorce or separation. And so, welcome again to my YouTube channel, Dee-zyne. If after the end of the video you liked what you heard, please feel free to give me a thumbs up as a like and click the icon to subscribe and receive notifications. And each time I drop a video, you will receive a notification. So let's get right into what we're going to talk about this morning for a few minutes. Living through a divorce. And many people who haven't gone through a divorce or separation might not be able to relate to those of us that have. I actually went through a divorce. It's probably been over 12 or 13 years ago. And so I am speaking from experience, not just something I read in the book, but I didn't experience it myself. And so I wanted to drop a few points of things that helped me along the way. And I'm hoping, they'll help you. Divorce isn't easy. And some people liken it to grieving a loss. And that's what it is. You're grieving a loss of a person that maybe you thought you were going to spend the rest of your life with, a loss of the family that you thought you were going to have. Maybe you thought, you were always going to have a two-parent home for your children or for your child. And so it is like a death. And no, it's not an actual death, obviously, but the things and the stages that you go through are similar to those that are grieving a physical death. And so you may feel some anger, some denial, some bargaining with God. And I just want to let you know that that is normal. It's expected. And I wanted to give a few tips or things that I went through and the way that I went through it. And again, this is not saying that you're going to go through this and walk through this exact same way that I did, but hopefully you'll find some of this that will be a little bit helpful to you, or maybe a lot helpful. So again, there's no magic formula to grieving a loss in the physical or a loss through a loss of a relationship. There's no magic formula. And so the first thing that I think I had to do, and maybe you may have to do too, is to let go of the expectation of what should have been or could have been. And many times we'll find ourselves ruminating over, oh, this would have been, oh, I should have been, by now we would have been doing this, or by now we would have been at this point in our life. And so we constantly ruminate about that expectation of what could have been or what should have been. And I tell you right now, we have to let that go and deal with the reality of what is. So let me say that again. We have to release that expectation that we had of what should have been, what could have been, what we thought it was going to be, who we thought they were going to be, and who we thought we would be at this season in our life. And we have to let that go. And I'm not saying it's easy. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen over a matter of days. It's a process. And it's not a linear process, which means it doesn't go in this straight, nice, neat line from A to B to C to D on down to Z. It's very non-linear. It's all over the place. And you'll have some days that you're feeling great and on top of the world and feeling empowered, and other days where you're barely wanting to get out of bed. So release that expectation of what should have been and could have been, and release it with the reality of what is. What are you dealing with? And that might sound harsh, but what choice do you have? You either live in the past and be constantly frustrated, or figure out, how do I move forward in my future, and how do I just get through each day? But I believe that is the first part, to let go. And then the second one, which is kind of closely tied to that, is acknowledging your pain. Acknowledge that you're angry. Acknowledge that you're hurt. Acknowledge that you're sad, that you're disappointed. Acknowledge that you want to hit something or punch something. Don't do that though, or try not to. But acknowledge that, because it's real. Our feelings are real. So there's no need in trying to numb out or overwhelm ourselves with thinking that, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this, or it's been this long and I should be past it. No. Even though you go through a divorce, it doesn't mean that the love that you had for that spouse, or that your spouse, whether it's a husband or a wife, but mainly I'm talking to women, so it's your husband, that love that you had for your husband, it doesn't just vanish into thin air just because you get a piece of paper from the court stating that you're divorced or the divorce is final. It doesn't mean that all those feelings and memories just go away. They don't. So we have to acknowledge them, accept them, and find help to be able to move through them. Now, some people get professional help through counseling, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some people get through it with their group or tribe of women friends and significant others, some through their faith-based community, but don't go through it alone. And there will be times where you'll want to just isolate yourself and retreat and go and spend hours and days in your home. That might be okay if you do that every now and then, but if you find yourself repeating this pattern of isolating and retreating and ruminating, it's time to reach out to at least one trusted friend, or reach out to your group of women that you trust and that you feel comfortable with. And if you don't have that, drop me a line in the comments, and we're going to pray that God will send you God-ordained friendships and relationships to walk this out with you. So the second thing is the acceptance of your feelings and what you feel. The third thing is, if you have children, and at the time, my son was about 3 or 4, going through the separation and then later the divorce. And so if you have children, your self-care is so important, because how you take care of yourself is going to impact your child or your children. And so as you're taking care of yourself, what you're doing is also taking care of your children. When you're co-parenting or beginning to co-parent, one thing that you want to do, and I know you may have these mixed feelings towards your ex, is you want to put your child's needs above you being right. And again, that might be a hard pill to swallow because you have feelings toward the significant, your spouse. But you have to put your child's needs above your need to be right. What is the best thing for the child? And so when you're co-parenting, you remember in math when you had fractions and you could only, I think it is add fractions that had common denominators. The common denominator with co-parenting is your child. And so your child should really dictate your actions regarding the choices that you make, what's going to be best for your son or for your daughter. And what's best for your son or your daughter may not always connect with what you feel is best for you or what is right, but you do have to try as much as you can. Now, I know there's going to be some extenuating circumstances, like if there's been abuse involved, or if there has been some sort of other abusive relationship. And so again, those things might be a little different, but you're still going to put your child's needs above everything else. What's safest for the child, emotionally, physically, mentally. And so many times children get caught in the middle of a divorce. And so with all that is within you, really try to keep the children out of the middle of your disputes. If you have to argue, or if it turns into an argument or a confrontation or a conversation, try to have those conversations without the children being present. Maybe have the conversations in public places or go to mediation. But try to keep the children out of the middle of things. Try to keep the children out of adult conversations. Your child should not become your confidant when you're going through a divorce. Your child should not be the one that you lean on for your emotional support. That's what we're there for. They're supposed to receive their emotional support from us. they're not our confidants. You need to find that one person, that trusted person, or if it's not, you pray to God to send you that person, or you pray to God and pour out your heart to him. But don't let your child bear the burden of your pain and your hurts, because it's not theirs to carry. And we don't want them to grow up and become, in the therapy world, we call that parentified. We don't want them to become parentified, where they're taking on a parental role to take care of us. So that means they cease to be children and they believe they have to take care of us. Now, does that mean you can't cry or show emotion in front of your son or daughter? No, it doesn't mean that. You just have to make sure it's age appropriate, and then it's an appropriate time, and that it's not so much that it scares them or overwhelms them, or they feel like now they have to take care of you. So again, keep the child's needs first and foremost, and put their needs above you being right. And the other thing I think that was very crucial for me is initially there is this questioning of why. Why, God? Why me? Why now? Why does this have to happen to me? Why did I go through this? And that's natural. That's normal to wonder and ask why. But we want to move that questioning from why to what. Why can keep us going around in circles. Why can keep us making us seem like we're that hamster on a hamster wheel. We're going and going and going around and around and around. We're expending this energy, but we're not going anywhere. It's like one time I got my tire stuck in mud, and the harder I pressed on the accelerator, you know what happened if you've ever done this. The mud just kept kicking up and spinning up, and the hole kept being deeper and deeper and deeper, and I wasn't going anywhere, but I was using a lot of energy, but not going anywhere. And that's what will happen if you camp out in this questioning of why, because there may be some questions that you don't get answers to. And we have to be okay with that. We have to accept that. But if we can move our questioning from why to what, okay, God, what would you have me to do? What am I supposed to learn about maybe myself from this situation? What am I supposed to get from this so that I can grow? What will enable me to grow closer to you? What will enable me to release the anger and the bitterness? What will enable me to forgive? Because forgiveness is key to releasing a lot of things. It doesn't mean those feelings go away. It doesn't mean that whatever may have happened that maybe, was wrong, doesn't mean that, now you're saying that's right. But forgiveness, like everyone has said, this is probably a repetition, but it's worth repeating. Forgiveness is for you. It's like saying, yes, this person owes me a debt, but I'm releasing them from that debt because I recognize they can never pay or repay this debt to me. So I'm just going to release them from that debt. I'm not saying that they don't have a debt. I'm just saying I'm now not expecting them to pay it back. That is forgiveness. Releasing a person so that you're not holding on to the bitterness, to the regret, to the anger, to the things that maybe were done to you that were not right. You're releasing them and saying, you know what, you do owe me an apology. You do owe me this, or this, but you know what? I'm going to release you from that debt. Because as believers, that's what Christ did for us. We had a sin debt that we could not pay, that we could not work off. And he died in our place and forgave us of our sins. Even before we accepted him, even while we were yet his foe or his enemy, he still paid our sin debt for us. And so as believers, we are expected to do the same thing. Again, is this easy? No. Does it happen overnight? For some people it might, but for some, it's a process. It's a daily process. It's a daily crucifying your flesh and surrendering it to God daily. So again, don't expect this to happen overnight. So move your why questioning to what, because what now empowers you to begin to make choices, to begin to make decisions, to begin to analyze what needs to be changed, or what maybe needs to be changed, or what other actions need to be taken in order to heal from this. It creates movement, not just this spinning of wheels, but we're not getting anywhere. It creates movement. The second thing is, which is kind of connected, it's okay to vent. It's okay to vent. Venting has its place. But if you find that you're constantly venting, that might be an issue. So again, moving from venting to a problem solving, or moving from venting to acceptance of this thing over here may not change because I can't control it. So I'm going to release it since I can't control it. I'm going to stop venting about it. I'm going to stop constantly talking about it. So if every conversation that you have with your friends is always about the separation, always about the divorce, always about what your ex did or didn't do, if your conversation is always that, then you might want to check yourself and say, okay, maybe I need to move from this venting to problem solving and getting at the root of the anger. And many times at the root of this anger is hurt and vulnerability. You might feel embarrassed or you might feel ashamed. Then deal with those core feelings. And again, if you need to solicit the help of someone, do that. So limit that venting and then get connected to a safe community, whether that's a small group, whether that is, if you are, linked into some community organization or somewhere where you can get some connection into community where you can be fed. And I'm thinking more so in spiritual terms. So I'm thinking more so connected to a small group. So for me, that's what I did. I connected to a small group, and I actually, in the midst of my divorce and separation, changed churches. Again, that was for me. That might not be for everyone, but for me, that was a necessary step. So I followed what I call the procedures for that. I sat down and I spoke with my pastor and co-pastor and said, look, I think this is what I need to do. I think this is a next step for me. And then from there, I, went to visit other churches until the Lord led me to where I'm currently fellowshipping. And so once there, I said, you know what? I got to get connected. And to be honest, when I first went there, I'm going to get lost in the crowd. I'm just going to come to church, hear the word, and leave. Because that's what I just need. And sometimes maybe you do need that. You don't need to maybe join something as soon as you come in. But for me, that wasn't my case. I was there for a little bit, maybe a month or so. But then I began getting connected to a small group, getting connected to doing some outreach. Why? I went outward. Because many times going through a divorce can make us really go inward. And our focus is ourselves, which is natural, and our children, which it should be. But a piece of going through this is also, how can I serve others? Because it helps to change my perspective and change my outlook so that I'm not so self-consumed or so self-absorbed to what I'm going through, especially as a believer. And it helps me to find ways to connect with others so that in the process of connecting, I'm giving of myself. I'm changing my perspective. Well, it's not all about me. And I found that I began to heal because I realized things don't revolve around me. And a part of what I had to deal with was pride. I wanted to be very independent, not ask anyone for help, not ask anyone for hardly anything. And so going through this process, I realized I couldn't do it alone. I'm not meant to do it alone. And even with whatever challenges I might face now, as a believer, I'm not meant to go through it alone. We have a ministry at our church called Shoulder to Shoulder, and the whole premise is standing beside your sister, creating sisterhood, and going shoulder to shoulder, standing shoulder to shoulder with your sister, saying, I'm here for you. I'm helping you. That doesn't mean you're going to be best friends with everybody in your church, but it's saying that I'm going to show up and do life with you. That might mean praying. That might mean reaching out and calling. That might mean sending a letter. That might mean interceding. It means different things for different people, but you can't do it alone. The hurt is real. The disappointment is real, but you can't go through those emotions and process those emotions alone. You could, but I don't believe you're going to get the best results from it. I don't think you're really going to heal and grow as much as you would if you stood shoulder to shoulder with someone or found that someone that you could connect with to help you to walk through this process. And again, don't be ashamed or afraid to go to therapy. Find a good therapist that you can process all this with, that you will have your 1 hour a week, that's your safe place to vent, to say whatever you say, and you don't have to worry about filtering yourself because you do have your children around. You can just say it however you feel, however it comes out, and your therapist will be there to help facilitate that process for you and to help you to figure out, well, what is this healing going to look like? What is my new normal going to look like? What is it going to look like now that I'm no longer married? Maybe your identity was fully wrapped up into being the wife of X, Y, and Z person. And now you're faced with, well, who am I now? Well, you are somebody. God created you, and you're his masterpiece. And you're more than just who you were married to. Yes, that is a part of what you did, but it's not fully who you are. You're so much more than a Mrs. somebody, a Mrs. X or Mrs. Y. You're more than that. You are a daughter of the King. You are a daughter of the Most High. So I got to go to work. And so if you have any questions or if you have any comments, please leave them in the comment section, and I will reach out to you and comment back and give you some feedback and